In this video, I'm going to talk about why you cannot know the world. And it's really a takeoff from the last video when I was talking about how the ego can never become enlightened, because in a way you can think of enlightenment as the recognition that you are not the I thought, you are not the ego. But it's the I thought that wants to be enlightened, but it can't, because the very definition of enlightenment is to go beyond the I thought. So I may do a couple more of these. Maybe I'll even call them 2-minute spirituality. Very short, basic, simple, what I call D-minders that get you away from the thinking mind and on a path that is far more peaceful. So let me know if you're interested in these. I'll make them 2 minutes. Let me know if you're interested in these. And I also may throw in a few lectures next week. I was thinking of doing a lecture on artificial intelligence and the movie AI. I think it's Steven Spielberg. It was an old 80s movie. It didn't get the attention I think it really deserves, but it's a really fascinating, very in-depth philosophical movie about who we are as human beings and love, and even plays a little bit off the story of Pinocchio and what it means to be real. And so let me know if you have any interest. But for this video, I was going to keep it short, but I want to explain why you can never know the real world. And it really follows a very similar argument, at least in terms of the strange paradox. So one of the dates I find terribly important that hasn't gotten nearly the press it deserves is 1967, when Ulrich Neisser defined what thought is. And he did this in a way that's stuck. It's stuck around. It's still the classic textbook definition of cognition, which is thinking. And when we think, cognitions refer to any sensory input that is transformed, reduced, elaborated, stored, recovered, and used. The key point there is that at the beginning, that it's any sensory input, so that's how we know the world, through our senses. And that's interesting too, because the senses are not photographs of reality. There's all kinds, and I talk about this in a few other videos, there's all kinds of transformations that go from transforming the energy of the physical world into something our senses can process. But then those sensory processes are then transformed, elaborated, edited, and then that becomes what we think. And of course, the Buddhists knew this. They knew very well that you cannot drink the word water. They knew that a finger pointing to the moon was not the moon. So they clearly made this distinction between our representations, our thoughts, these transformed, elaborated, edited versions of sensory input, and the real world. Now, the mystical experience may be something totally different, and that may be being in reality without thinking. But of course, the interesting paradox with that too is that when someone comes back to the mode of normal transmission of information like we're in right now, we have to do it through the thinking mind. And so far, the mystical experience has been practically impossible to. It's far too vast. It's impossible to put into this small little box that we call cognition and thinking and language. And so, the basic argument, though, goes back to again, what wonderful paradox that you cannot know the world because knowledge is itself transformed, edited. It's an interpretation. And so the interpretation is never the world itself. On the other hand, if you happen to stumble upon a mystical experience, that may very well be reality itself. But then again, you can't take that huge, vast experience and contain it within a small box of thinking.